This podcast is brought to you by Fandom Spotlight. Check us out at fandomspotlight.com. Have fun and follow your fandom.
Anime, we have your attention, please, and welcome to another episode of Dragon Ball for Life, where you come for the content, but you stay for the culture. As always, we are your hosts, Singing A. Smith himself, Mr. Troto Trav, and I, Bro Jita, the Prince of all Saiyans, Mr. Matthew Porter. And boy, is that name relevant this week, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a Super Saiyan-sized challenger that has decided to answer the Dragoncall. Some may call him royalty, while others may say he's almighty. And even more may say that he cuts through his dialogue with a silver tongue that's sharper than 7 katana blades working as one piece. See what I did there?
Oh, man.
Entendre, don't ask.
But us 90s babies, us 90s babies simply know him as one of the GOATs. The Prince, the almightiest. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our esteemed, prideful pleasure to introduce to you our guest for this evening, Mr. Christopher Sabat. Let's get some snaps in the building.
Hey, what's up? Can I snap for myself? Is that weird?
Absolutely. Please do.
Cool.
Look, we encourage all the self-indulgence on this podcast.
Good.
All the praise you want to keep on to yourself, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for joining us, because we know around this time of the year, and we can imagine a voice actor of your upper echelon, you're probably mega busy. So for you to take the time out, we greatly appreciate it. For sure.
I'm really grateful to be on the show. Oddly enough, you have actually reached me during what is kind of the slower part of the year. It used to be more November through kind of January. Were the slow months for the conventions, but COVID kind of moved some of that around, especially last year, because so many people had to, kind of reschedule their events in the previous years. They were all just kind of stacking up. But believe it or not, you actually caught me during a fairly relaxed time. It's really nice. It's nice. The problem I have though is the longer I stay home, the more I just want to stay home. And I'm I don't want to go travel anymore. This is annoying. But
he said working remotely isn't an option anymore.
Oh gosh. Although I tried the remote convention thing.
How's that working?
Ooh. They did these things that were meet and greets, right? Where they had me in a room, at my house or whatever, and they would just. I would just pop into somebody's room or whatever on their camera, and it just felt gross sometimes, because you just pop into somebody's living room. But the problem is they didn't tell you anything about the person, what they liked, anything. And you've only got in order to make it so that they could actually get through people, you only had 3 minutes. So it was speed dating, but just meeting a fan. Just hey, how's it going? Hey, what do you actually like? Do you actually like Vegeta, or what's your show? Okay, Dragon Ball. Okay, talk Dragon Ball. I love Dragon Ball. All right, well, cool. Is that your mom? Oh, you're not supposed to be doing this today. Okay, cool. Well, I'll let you go then. Yeah. Please tell her that I work in anime, and you're just not talking to some 50-year-old dude.
Random guy. And then I imagine, because your time constraints, the guest probably thinks you're trying to big league him and get him off. So they're
dude,
he's such a dick. Yeah.
I feel bad. And they would have this I could see a timer that would click down,
but they wouldn't.
And I had this.
Man, that's even worse.
And the problem was they gave me an override button. And where I could give myself more time, and I just couldn't ever let people go. Eventually, they had to go hey, we're eventually going to cut you off, Chris. But I was look, I feel weird. They're telling me about how sick their dad is. I'm all right, well, that's cool. Gotta go, man. See you later.
Dragon Ball really bonded me and my father. All right, yeah, great talking to you. Gotta go.
Hey, that was really cool.
You hit him with wow, that shit crazy. All right.
I got to jump into another random room real quick and start this all over again.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for your portrayal of All Might, my family would have fell apart. Oh, all right. Yeah, all right. Great. Gotta go.
Exactly.
Well, so you guys talk about Dragon Ball mostly, right? You bring them in with Dragon Ball.
That's the honey. That's how we suck them in.
Okay, good.
And then once they're stuck, it's like, oh, hey, we cover a wide variety of everything. And it's like, all right, cool, awesome.
Once we hopefully, they like us,
Yeah, exactly.
You guys should call it Dragon Ball. Like Dragon Ball for life, but you're actually just a Sailor Moon podcast or something. That'd be really, that just blow people's minds.
We actually just had an interview with Sailor Jupiter, Amanda Miller. We had talked about it in the
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we got into that. Yeah, but that would be hilarious. Like we bring them in and we're like a cooking podcast. Like has nothing to do with anime.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna be interviewing Chris Sabat today, but first, let's kind of go over last week's episode of Sailor Moon. Anyway,
say, hey Matt, do you have the latest recipe for that cheese souffle?
You know I did.
yeah, right.
But Chris, the first question that we like to ask, people in the industry is that when it comes to voice acting, like, was this always your passion? And then if so, like, was anime always like your go-to? Because it seems like you definitely locked into a niche market and you just kind of ran the gambit for years now at this point.
Like, I wasn't sure that, like, I didn't even really understand the concept of voice acting when I was young, right? Like, I didn't grow up in the era of internet. So any knowledge you had to have been from some, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, like game of telephone version of what facts actually are. Mm. And if you wanted to learn about stuff, you actually had to kind of find a magazine article or go to the library and then look things up. It just wasn't like
nerd.
Exactly. No, but there just wasn't it wasn't easy for like you're 10. You're like, hey mom, drop me off at the library. Like she'd even go like, look, you can't spend that much time there. But I did, like, once I got into voice acting, obviously I realized that a lot of the things in my life were leading me in that direction. But I think the biggest thing that kind of pushed me in the direction of being a voice actor was that I developed a super, super deep voice at a really young age. I was like 10 years old. I had the same voice I have now. And all the people were like, okay, they didn't,
who's ready for
no one around me in my small town, like relatively small town of in Texas was like, oh, you should become an anime voice actor, because they didn't even know that existed. They're like, you should get into radio. So I did get into radio, and then eventually that kind of led me into other things. But my whole life, I've been a fan of sounds and making things. I would go to the library a lot, but I would only go and check out sound effects records so that I could kind of play them and listen to them at home. I was obsessed with just the way things sounded when I was young. Anything that could make a sound, I wanted to hear what it sounded like. And so it kind of led me where I am today.
Were you the go-to friend of prank calls?
Oh, dude, are you kidding? I believe I was one of the alphas of like the patient zero of prank calling, man. Like I was into prank calling from the youngest age, and we had it good too, because we didn't, like when I was growing up, they didn't have like no caller ID. They had this thing called Star 69 where you could like call the person back who called you, but that was just a second time to prank them. Like if someone ever called back mad, I'd just call back and like I'd pick up my deepest voice and go, I'm sorry, that was my son. He's pretty troubled. I'm gonna give him a good smack that'll talk some sense into him.
I can imagine your friends calling you like, bro, like if my dad doesn't approve, I can't go on this field trip. I need you to call the school.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very, very helpful. And I kind of, it's along with making the sounds, I used to like to make these weird like audio environments where I would create a scene using just different record players all playing at the same time. It's like a DJ that didn't have any beats.
There you go.
And I would make these kind of environments and then kind of talk over them. So anytime a teacher would ask if I wanted, like we were supposed to do a presentation or something like that, it ended up being, I usually asked if I could do an audio project instead. And so they always let me do that. It's my way of cheating my way out of never having to learn how to be a great writer.
I didn't know that was an option.
Matt,
all these years, I was about to say, I would have loved to just do that.
Right? But it just took, I think that was one of my other skills. I was very bold in the things I would ask for. And I think part of having a deep voice is that people listen to what you say.
They have reverence
you more
for
often.
Oh, yes,
yeah, yeah. This deep voice kid, he knows what he wants.
You're talking to the principal. I think we should get out early on Friday. You know what? I think we should get out early on Friday.
I made the most out of my public school experience, though, man. Like I loved school. I mean, I was involved in everything, man. Like student council. I was like president of student council, president of the choir, president of the drama club, president of like the student body. Like it just, anything I could be involved in, I was involved in.
Gotcha. So if it wasn't anime, would you kind of have like stuck with radio, like in terms of like broadcasting or telecasting or anything like that?
Well, it wasn't even that anime took me out of radio. I had really kind of grown tired of it. Unfortunately, I got into radio during a time when radio had changed a lot. Like when I was growing up, I saw this movie like Good Morning Vietnam that had Robin Williams in it, right? And it was all exactly right. Classic. That's what I thought radio was going to be like, or any of these like movies or shows that would kind of glorify what a DJ was. And in the 70s, it certainly was like that. It was crazy. Like if you're a DJ, you can get on the air and do whatever the hell you wanted to. By the time I got into it, which would be somewhere in like the mid 90s, something happened to the radio industry where they kind of released all these, like radio used to be highly regulated, right? Where you couldn't go in and own more than one radio station in any market. So it left a lot of freedom and people be able to do what they want to do. But by the time I got into it, basically Coca-Cola owned 80% of the radio stations in any town, right? So it was very structured. A DJ was there literally just to read what was on a piece of paper and get out before the commercials that they're required to play. You know what I mean?
I would imagine that's probably where like payola like originated, because like they had to like slide some money under the door. Like, hey, let me just read this insert instead of that one. Like,
right. Except I think payola was probably that was definitely happening, I'm sure, before the corporations took over. Once the corporations took over, then I'm sure the payola was just from like Exxon or like, the U.S. government. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, one thing I found that when I was working in radio that I actually really did love to do was the production aspect of it. Okay. I was on the air, yes, but I was also a production director, which meant I was responsible for helping make the commercials that would be on the air. Like typically local radio commercials are a way of being able to offer people in a smaller town the ability to have like a presence on the radio without having to hire a super expensive advertising agency, right? So you just kind of go in, find what they need, and you sort of make them a commercial, and they're super happy with it. And I loved making those. So I knew the production was in my future in some way. Music was a big part of my life too. So I thought maybe that's something I was going to go into, but I sort of kind of stumbled into the anime industry, dude.
Have you ever considered a Vegeta Christmas album? There's a market in there for
just
it.
Yells.
Sean Schemmel, the voice of Goku, and I have talked this through so many times. And if we weren't afraid of literally having our necks cut off by our friends in Japan, we would have done it a long time ago. But there's a certain way that, brands want their characters represented. Absolutely. And I don't think that Sean and I are the ones who should be, well, at least I would love to say I should be responsible for what he says, but I guess it's up to them, the people who own these characters, to know what they want their characters to sound like. You don't see the voice of Mickey Mouse like running around, or like Bob Bergen or whatever, like running around making their own Christmas albums for things, because Disney would literally bury them. So it's not uncommon.
It's kind of crazy, because like I've seen you and Sean like on like cons together and stuff, like on stage. Yeah. And it's crazy because like your characters, like Goku's kind of like the loose cannon, and, Vegeta's more like, subdued and like, militant. But it's just like when you see you two in real time, it's like you think it's reversed, but it's really not. So it's like a inception, like a double inception. And it's crazy because we've talked.
Sean and I are so different. So different.
Because we've talked to a couple other voice actors, and like Sean kind of has like a reputation, like, it's like you never know what he's going to say.
No. And one thing he does have in common with Goku is that he is, in his soul, he is dedicated to what he does.
Right.
He may not always go about it like the perfect way, but it's deep in his heart. It comes from a good place. He just, he had a whack childhood and like freaky, weird parents. And like, he just, I don't know, man.
So Goku.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I think he would have been better off with Goku's parents, which were non-existent for most of his life.
Right.
But Sean's a good dude. Like he's like a family member, but kind of like the family member that shows up for the holidays where you're like, oh, don't say that. Okay, I still love you anyway, but like maybe don't talk about that with grandma or whatever. But Sean and I have a long history together, and it is really funny. I'm kind of more passive. I'm conflict avoidant. I'm more like, hey, that's cool. We can talk this out. Like let's chill. And Sean is the one who's like quick to be in your face about something if he disagrees with you.
Yeah, that's kind of always been me and Trav's dynamic, like you on and off camera. Like we always say, like we compliment each other because like our running gag is like, I'll bring the chaos and Trav controls it.
Yeah.
He directs it the right direction.
Well, let's think about this real quick.
That sounds very familiar, man. There's so many times I'm just like, okay, cool. Now that you talked to Sean, let's dial this back in and see where we're at together. Right. Like, and let's all be friends. No, he can be intimidating, but he loves to talk about Dragon Ball. He is really inspirational in a lot of ways that I clearly am not. Actually, he understands and thinks about Dragon Ball in a far more philosophical way than I ever do, because I'm more of a just, hey, what happens. I'm just like, whatever. But Sean is very, very like philosophical about his ideas about Goku and where he comes from. And I guess maybe you have to be when you play kind of the lamer of the two characters,
right?
But of course, when you have to play Goku, you got to think about it, because otherwise he sucks.
Matt would agree with that statement.
1,000%.
But Chris, you mentioned something about your.
I have waged the personal. Sure.
Oh, no, I was just saying.
I think the internet was just like had you on top of one another for a split second there. Sorry.
No, I promise you, we don't talk over each other. No. But no, you did mention something about in your early career with production. Has that translated over into anime? Because I know that you have to stick to the source material, but obviously when it comes to translation, you can't just do a one-to-one of Japanese to English. There has to be, all right, how do we present this from an English standpoint? So has your early experience in production, has that translated over where like you can, implement what you learned earlier in your career to try to help mold what is like truly, the message that you want to convey through these characters from an English standpoint?
It's actually interesting you bring that up, because the philosophy of Dragon Ball and the way it was dubbed was very different when we first started than now. And this was started prior to me even getting to drag into the Funimation family or whatever, way back in the day. I was shortly after that, but Funimation had gotten a property like Dragon Ball, and there was nothing like Dragon Ball on the air, really. Like most people still believed at the time in 1998 that cartoons were for children. And I mean, I think even Toei had decided at that point that like, hey, we want this to be popular with kids as well, because and let's just be honest, it's more profitable if you can get kids to buy the toys. I mean, that's just kind of the way. I mean, I'm not just pointing a finger at them. That's just the way most of the industry works. You want it to be successful. You think like, most people think like, oh, you get a show on TV, they pay you for that, and then you're good. No, it's not the case. Like a cartoon on television is essentially just a 30-minute commercial for whatever else you have. And I hate to like say it that way, but it's the reality. But on the plus side, we get a great show out of it. So when we first started working on Dragon Ball, the concept was, well, this needs to be acceptable to an American audience. Can't be too weird. Can't be too radical. And then there were some changes made.
Weird and radical. That's America summed up.
Well, it is now. But it just couldn't be too strange. They wanted it to be presented like a cartoon. And at the beginning, for better or worse, I mean, you could argue that maybe it would have worked either way, because Dragon Ball is such a powerful show everywhere in the world. But I mean, love it or hate it, that sort of translation style, it worked. It did change some of the meaning of some of the characters. Like Goku was presented as this hero character. And yes, he is theoretically the hero of Dragon Ball, but he really is just a dude who just wants to get stronger, and that's it. And if he happens to help people along the way, well, there you go. But what I've learned over the years of kind of adapting things from Japanese into English is that there is a way to present the source material in a way that's really accurate, but still with the focus on making sure somebody in English can enjoy it as much as someone does in the original language. So I'm not afraid of changing lines or changing things that happen slightly so that it can be enjoyed in the same way. It's like you can't tell the same joke in Japan and in England and in America right. and have it be funny in both ways. You're going to have to change it, right? So, along the way, I still firmly believe that there's a lot of ways that you can keep things enjoyable and keep things fresh. Like I like to add like little lines here and there just to keep the flow of anime working really well, because Japan has this tendency to just stack their lines like line, 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 line. Whereas in English, when we're talking, or like when you guys were talking earlier because of an internet mistake, you're just talking on top of one another. But we typically do that. Things overlap and stuff. And I like that to happen in the dubs that I work on as well. So I don't know, man. Dragon Ball has changed a lot, but now we're lucky. We're helmed by Crunchyroll and by Funimation, even for the last 10 years, where they really did put a huge focus on let's make sure this show is exactly what Toriyama would have intended. So it's pretty cool.
No, that is cool. And kind of with that, like on the production side, when Dragon Ball Z like went from like the Ocean dub, when we all had it like Saturday morning cartoon style, you know, with Brian Drummond and everything like that, when it switched to Funimation, was there kind of like an edict that came down like, all right, we need to match the tone of how they did it? Or was it kind of like, all right, we're going to do our own thing? This is
it was the idea and that's when I was literally brought in as just a low-level employee at Funimation. My job was to help them cast and direct the early episodes of Dragon Ball. Ooh, cool. And the main goal was let's soften this landing as much as possible, because people are going to get freaked out the minute it goes from like one whole cast to a different cast. Yeah. And the idea was like to kind of like to really make that as the least amount of pain possible for people. So when we were first auditioning for these, the goal was to sound as much like the Canadian cast as we could. But over time, I allowed people to quickly adapt their voices into what they wanted to. And that included That's me. Awesome. I loved Brian Drummond's portrayal of Vegeta. And I think for the Saiyan saga, it was a perfect, it was a perfect voice for that. So I really I don't think I would have done it much differently. But as Vegeta goes on in the series, like he changes physically. Like he goes, like by the end of the series, I like to joke that he has like testicles between his eyebrows, you know what I mean? Like he's got like these, he has muscles so like right here, right? And so he's like, their physicality changes. And so over the time, as I really learned more about Vegeta, I allowed my voice to kind of drift into what I felt like his character was more. And so it's kind of morphed into what I think Vegeta should be. And a lot of what helped that was working on the video games all these years, because I own a company called Okratron, and Okratron 5000 has done all of the Dragon Ball audio for video games since, That's awesome. I mean, gosh, Budokai 2.
Budokai.
It's been like 20 years of working on their games as well.
Tenkaichi 2 was Budokai Tenkaichi 2. That was my favorite game.
That was an amazing game.
It was so good.
And so, believe it or not, that was the first time I actually heard the Japanese voices.
Oh, wow.
Really? We never heard their voices prior to that. Like when we were recording the series, originally we didn't get to hear their voices. We just weren't technologically set up.
Was that like by design, so like you wouldn't like be influenced by what they had going on, or it just wasn't available at that time?
I think it was really a technological limitation and a speed limitation, because our computer was just freaking slow. really, really slow. I mean, we were recording to computers, but it was not a company that had made a lot of money. We weren't like Pixar or Lucas or anything like that.
Dude, you're getting Adele.
Right. We had a Macintosh, but I remember having an argument with my producer going like, dude, can we just please get 2 megabytes of RAM? I think it would really help us a lot. Well, how much is like 1 megabyte? I'm like, okay, fine.
I'll get what I can get.
That reminds me on when we had Jason on, we were just talking about, that same concept of just not having access to like the Japanese content. And I was saying that, one of my friends, he had recordings on VHS of Dragon Ball GT. And I remember when I first started to get into Dragon Ball Z, I had like borrowed his VHSs, and it was just in the middle of which arc? The first arc. And
the Grand Tour.
Yeah, I didn't know what the hell they were saying, but I was just like, but that was my way to just see it. But I was like, dang, you don't have the recordings for Super Saiyan 4? They're like, nah, I don't have that. I'm like,
we ain't get there yet.
Yeah, I mean, you were at the mercy of like either how good your parents were at starting and stopping the VHS, or how much money your parents were willing to spend on those expensive VHS tapes in the store,
I remember them well, man. Suncoast videos. We should like get sponsored by them if they still exist, because
I swear
we
you
somehow every episode somehow they make it into the show for sure. But Chris, on your behalf, me and Travis have waged like a war of the injustice that is constantly done to Vegeta. And something you had said kind of triggered it for me, like how you were saying like how his body physically has changed from the Saiyan saga, the Namek to the Buu saga and everything. Yeah, right. Dude, in your opinion, or either your preference, because we've always said that we think Vegeta is probably like one of the best flushed out anime characters of all times, just in terms of like character arc and growth and actually like development, where like you said, Goku's just kind of just a linear path the whole entirety of the series. It's just same motivation, like same character, same temperament. Do you think that that they purposely give Vegeta like depth because they shit on him storyline wise so much?
They yank that victory away from him.
They'll give him the little sprinkle and then riff it right away.
It's that State Farm commercial with the dollars.
You got to be quicker than that.
It's the worst. And I've joked that maybe Vegeta was somehow like based on somebody who bullied Akira Toriyama.
We say that all the time.
But I don't know. There's a famous book, and it's almost a philosophy that goes with that book, written by Ayn Rand, and it's called Atlas Shrugged. And the whole it's like a lot of it is the concept of there's a kind of a political movement that's even that aligns itself with that. But the idea of Atlas Shrugged is that like that book is just so much like Vegeta's character. They almost accomplish something and then it gets torn down, and they almost accomplish something great and then it gets torn down, or they come so close, or they actually achieve something and then it gets torn down again. And there is something about, I think that's why we like Vegeta, and some of it could be his penance for how bad he was. Like we forget, and I have to remind people. Yeah, but still, it's true though. It wasn't his fault. He probably, he had real crap parents. Like his King Vegeta wasn't that great, and then his adopted mom, dad, whatever gender you want to assign to Frieza, was then then his parent. So he didn't have the best upbringing, and he was just doing culturally what his people did. But I have to remind people that Vegeta's come so far that we've actually forgotten that he was the kind of dude that was like, Nappa, you're not strong enough. Okay, destroy you. Okay, cool. He's gone.
I can do this by myself.
He's just the kind of guy who would just kill you because you just weren't, you weren't bringing it, and so he's I think part of that is his penance.
His whole introduction was like eating a leg of one of the people he killed on the planet. It's like
I'd heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I'd heard a theory that the Planet Arlia version of Vegeta, that green and orange and brown kind of look that he had. It was theorized that they were going to bring him in looking like that.
Like that was his original color. I heard,
but apparently that it was actually too expensive because it was such a different color palette than the rest of Dragon Ball that they had to buy all these other new like inks and stuff like that, and it was very difficult to source that. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's pretty fascinating.
I've heard that too. I'm not mad at that was the ambience of the planet. I'm fine with that. Not having.
I'm okay with that too. Like it had a different sun, and maybe it had a different reflection off the colors. Is it a blue dress or is it a white dress? Who knows?
So
I got the science. Total tangent, which you'll find, Chris. We do a lot here. I've got the science of that blue dress, gold dress, and it actually it's crazy. So, so they were saying it has something to do with like the refraction of light. And if you're looking at the dress thinking that it's like inside and it's like artificial light, you'll see it one color. But like if you like clear your palette and imagine it as like being natural light, you'll see it as the other color. And I've tried it and it really does work. Like it's quite creepy actually. Like it's really weird.
Our brains are mysterious. Troll Trav, what were you about to say something? What were you about to say?
I was saying, sticking to the whole character progression of Vegeta, one of the iconic moments that I thought was where we see that kind of shift into what we're seeing of the Super Vegeta version is the Final Atonement episode of Dragon Ball Z, right before he blows himself up against Majin Buu. So I remember watching that, and it was like an emotional episode, seeing him finally have a father-son moment with Trunks. So were you in your fields recording that episode as much as us fans were watching that?
My guys come so far.
Right?
Oh
Yeah. I was like, good father Vegeta.
As I said, we didn't have the materials for Dragon Ball all the way through. And if we did, they certainly didn't share them with me, but it seemed as if we did not have those materials. So, and I didn't even have a copy of the manga working at it. There was no translated manga for me to look at either during those days. So I just, anything that happened to Vegeta, I experienced it just, about 6 months to a year before you did. And it was usually in the booth or when I would see it. As soon as the episode came in, I knew what was going to happen to him. So I experienced it kind of in real time. So my feelings were the same. The only difference is that, right before having those feelings, I had to scream really loudly, which intensified my emotions. And so that I think I will always say that moment in Dragon Ball was the by far the peak of Dragon Ball Z. That was the best moment, I think, in the whole show. And if you encapsulate that with the fight that immediately happens with Goku before that whole epic battle, the Majin stuff, you can take my mind and my body, but you'll never take my pride. All that stuff is that's just best Dragon Ball right there.
100%.
And I will go to the grave saying that is I think it's still better than all of Super at this point too. It's just a remarkable scene, and that's the scene where everybody falls in love with Vegeta too.
1,000%.
Oh damn. Okay. Yeah, that was an important moment, and it was kind of like Zoro's nothing happened moment in One Piece. If you're a One Piece fan, that's where you turn and you're like, oh dang, Zoro's right.
That's the guy. And then Ace came in and stole all his cool factor. It's now we like him.
They're like, well, and then Zoro's like, well, in about 700 episodes or so, I'll have my chance again.
You just gotta stick around.
Stick around the Wano arc and you'll be fine.
You'll love it here. You'll love it here. But that series of episodes, I remember where I was, what I was doing, when those fights had happened and everything.
And
probably
commercials.
Yeah. Oh man. And then I love the part where Vegeta's monologuing and Goku's chained to the rock and he just starts to smacking him in the face. I love that. He's like, quiet clown.
Dude, it was so good.
All of that.
and I love his whole all right, fine, we can go together. And then he goes, okay, cool, plonk. And he gets hit in the back of the head. And Vegeta's like, sorry, psych. That was such a great moment. But I would say, if it weren't for that dichotomy of those two characters, I actually wonder how well Dragon Ball would work. I don't know how much, don't know how much of that was Akira Toriyama's design either, how much he had thought that through. I mean, no one knows what's going on in his brain. It may have just been something kind of happened and he realized what was happening, because he certainly, like, now it seems like the lead of Goku, like the lead of Dragon Ball in all of is the main character of Dragon Ball is Vegeta and Goku. Yeah, like it's the two of them together.
Yep.
And it's that relationship together, I think, that makes them. Goku's still, going to be on more T-shirts, but it's that combination of. I know, Boo's hardly on any T-shirt. But I think it's become like the yin and yang they have is almost, it's become a story element. And I truly believe that in the end, if Dragon Ball, when it finally ends, it's just going to be Vegeta and how's it working my camera? It's just going to be yin yang forever, like Destroyer, Angel, constant cycle.
That's what me and
forever.
Trav have been saying. Yeah, that's what me and Trav. For you, like storyline wise, obviously, like you're biased to your character, but now that they're at like Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct, do you hope that like just for like the development of this property as itself that they kind of do move them off and kind of like let the other characters fend for themselves? Because it's like, how much stronger are they going to get at this point?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, but we've seen, I don't know. I think it would be interesting to see what happens, because the good thing is that everybody has their favorites, right? There's Gohan fans out there, Piccolo fans out there. I love that Piccolo finally got his glow up, right?
Yeah, man.
Finally.
But so I guess there is room for it to fracture and kind of go off in its own way. But I don't know. I've always felt, and maybe I'm a sucker just like everybody else is, but I like when you remove, what's his name? I just went blank. The guy from, wow, now I went blank on the show. Walking Dead, right?
Rick left.
You remove Rick, the show just kind of didn't feel the same. So I worry that might happen to Dragon Ball as well. Like you can take him out for a while, but it is about time for the rest of the characters to kind of do something, because Krillin hardly has a point anymore. Poor Yamcha, right? and Yamcha and Tien just sit around going like, well, you're just a tiny bit lamer than I am. He's like, no, you're a tiny bit lamer.
Like I said,
he's like, you talk to a puppet. He's like, you talk to your cat.
Right. Yeah, me and Trav make the joke all the time that it's like, it's so crazy. Like when you go back and watch Dragon Ball, like how close Goku and Krillin were, and he kind of like got usurped by like the frenemy friendship for Vegeta's. Like he didn't even invite him to tell him he had a kid. He didn't do nothing. Like that's supposed to be your best friend. It's like if I was Krillin, I would really be like, we need to talk about our relationship, bro. Like,
I have not actually thought about this, but that would be one hell of an interesting movie concept of like Krillin suddenly obtaining some Goku. Sort of insane power, and like he's just like, you left me in the dust or whatever. Like now I'll destroy you. But yeah, I think that would be interesting. Resurrection K.
K. Let's go. Justice for my man. Hashtag free Krillin.
He's like, I've been saving something this whole time. He goes, whoa, 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 and his nose grows out. He's like, I had one all along.
The dots, like, it just start lighting up on his phone.
They turn yellow.
Exactly. The dots all form into one dot, and we can go down a rabbit hole here, man. But no, I agree. Like it is weird to go back. I watched like Dragon Ball holds up really well too.
It
if
really
you
does.
Haven't seen that series,
good.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see that redubbed as well.
Yeah, and what Matt and I have been saying in terms of how you could flesh out potentially, the other characters. I mean, I think that's what made Superhero so entertaining to me, was the fact that like, okay, Gohan and Piccolo can't call on Goku and Vegeta right now. They need to defend Earth, and Goku and Vegeta are at a power levels where like I'm thinking, they could go like like the Captain Marvel route, where it's like they only are handling like multiversal
threats.
threats.
Yeah.
Where Earth should be like, technically at this point, Earth should be fine with Gohan, Piccolo, everyone else there defending it, and hopefully with Gohan, Beast, and Orange Piccolo now, it's not just like Gohan then forgets how to get that form again, and now he has to retrain. But I think there'd be a cool element, especially with all the lore that they introduced with the battle. I mean the Universal saga, where you just have all these different characters now where I think that you could have Goku and Vegeta, and now with the introduction of Broly and how just a cheat code he is, you could have them fight against just multiversal threats. And
I would agree with you on that. That is the thing that made Dragon Ball superheroes very special, that like they had to fend for themselves. And you saw Piccolo having to kind of retrain his brain to not rely on those two. You know what I mean?
I love that line that you had said. We was just like, oh, like when Goku was just like, oh, Gohan was like, we'll just call my dad and Vegeta. And he's like, no, like, this is the problem.
I love seeing how close his relationship is with Gohan too.
Oh, it's the greatest dad in anime history.
Oh, he's Piccolo awesome. Speaking, we were talking about like side stories and like what I think there could be. I've joked that there could be a whole side story where they just do one whole episode where they just cut away to two like random people, and it's just one of them going like, dude, I am serious, like here I am, I'm watching this tournament, things go crazy, I swear to God, I was blown up, completely blown up, I exploded, but then 1 minute later I'm just sitting here, I'm back in the stadium again, and like it's so crazy, and no one believes me. And they all just write him off to be some sort of psycho because they wish all these people back. But they don't explain anything. The same thing would happen. Like everyone's like, what would happen if they wished Planet Vegeta back to life? I'm like, well, that would be a weird explanation. Like Vegeta have to show up and go, hello, Great Warriors. I know it's been a while.
He said, by the way, we don't pillage and plunder anymore.
Yeah, we don't do any of that anymore. We're actually nice to our women. We have families and we do things with them.
Start handing out HR packets.
Yeah. Now we're going to have to find jobs because our entire gross domestic product relied on us destroying things. So
they're going to think they're going to have to like do like physical training, and then Bulma just shows up with a Capsule Corp, just My Learning online courses.
Yep. Right, exactly.
They got to hop on a Zoom call.
You've got all these Saiyans like taking the course like, I like your dress. That just feels so weird to say.
I don't like it.
Thank
my wife.
Right. Please. I don't beg. So Chris, so I need you. We do need you to finally put the kibosh in something, because there's been like this fake news that's been going around that Goku has actually beat Vegeta in a fight, and then it was like perpetuated by that line at the end of Superheroes where he knocks him down. He's like, I finally did it. Technically, he is 3-0 against Goku.
Right.
Goku has never beaten Vegeta in a one-on-one fight. When they fought on Earth, Yajirobe cut off his tail, and then Krillin was about to deliver the kill shot. Goku was checked out. He was paralyzed. Like, he literally had nothing to do with that.
He didn't beat him.
If you want to be technical, even on Namek, Vegeta beat up Captain Ginyu in Goku's body. So he took that L too. And then, the Majin Buu saga knocked him out. So he's 4-0. If you want to count the Namek.
I actually forgot about the whole Namek thing. That's another win for him. Yeah, he's
4-0. He's undefeated in one-on-one competition.
So I'm assuming did you watch the dub and the sub version of the movie?
Yes.
Yes. It was really interesting at the end of that movie where Vegeta kind of punches Goku, and it seems like they both fall down at the same time. He's like, in your face or whatever. Like that moment when they cut back to Goku, it was really hard. I sat there for a long time, and then I had Sean sit there for a long time. Then I had Justin Cook, who's the voice of Raditz and Super Boo and stuff like that. I had him sit down for a long time. We were all just trying to analyze one tiny sound of Moscow Nozawa's, and it was just to say or whatever Moscow does at the very end. Is that a laugh of like, well, you did get me, or is it a laugh of, I let you have that one?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
The debate rolls on.
I don't know. There's no way of knowing.
When Superhero came out, like there was like so many like, oh, Vegeta finally gets one over. Like I was getting into like full blown arguments, like comments under YouTube videos, like he's never beaten him. like stop saying these lies. Like, and then like I would give my reasoning, like, oh, he didn't beat him on Earth. He got beat up by him on Namek. He definitely lost that fight. And they were like revisionist history, like, oh, well, it's because of this, that, and the third. I was like, y'all just don't want my man to win.
Right?
He can't have anything. It was like, because he got Bulma. That's his victory. Like,
that's the truth.
He don't need nothing else.
He's a family man now.
For sure.
People like to ask me, they'll go like, well, do you think Vegeta, I mean, even before, and they'll probably still ask me after this, but like, do you think Vegeta will ever really beat Goku? And I'm like, sure. And then the show will be over. It's like, I finally beat. And then it would cut to the credits. And like,
have a Soprano style ending. Just cut off.
And then my other thought was like, well, if he did, let's say he killed Goku, like he destroyed Goku. Like, I just feel like it would be the most depressing thing for Vegeta, because Vegeta would have nothing after that.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
He needs Goku in a way, just like
White Rabbit.
Yeah, yeah, dude.
Yeah, something to chase. And then it's just like, I love the fact that they like both subtly acknowledge that they're best friends. Like, they don't like say it, but it's kind of like,
right,
we're bet. We hang out every day.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true.
Like, you're my guy. Like, we don't have to say it. It's understood.
They see each other more than they see their wives and kids.
Facts.
That's for sure.
Like, I mean, Vegeta's trying to balance it out a little bit more now, but Goku, he's just like, oh yeah, I forgot, I got a family to attend to. But you know,
of course, yeah. Goku finally shows up at the last minute, of course, and Gohan's like, Dad! He goes, yeah, son. Vegeta, what's going on here?
He's like, wait, you're supposed to spend time with them?
Yeah.
Never knew. After all these years.
Gohan turned out pretty well, all things considered.
He did.
Gohan was just trying to do was pursue what he wanted to pursue.
That's it.
And, you know, people didn't like that.
I mean, in a way, that's just like Goku. You know, Goku wanted to pursue fighting, and that's all he wanted to do, and that's good. We're very lucky that he actually didn't inherit any of Chi-Chi's traits, because then he'd be like yelling at people all the time.
Easily.
me and Trav had a joke like last podcast we did. We were just like, between all the one tournament sagas or Bulma being his best friend, like, why do they always have money issues? Like, especially because like they grow and eat their own food. Like, unless that grocery tab is like wiping out their bank account, which I wouldn't be surprised. Like, you're the daughter of the Ox King. Like, your husband's best friend's the richest person on planet Earth. You win all these martial arts tournaments. Your son's married to Hercule, who's rich. Why are y'all always broke?
Goku has a gambling problem. Look, they don't talk about it in the show.
We said it for about Chi-Chi. Like, what if Chi-Chi's like been addicted to FanDuel for like decades and like, no one knew? Like, what'd you call it, Trav? You had like a name for it. I can't remember what you called it. We was like, basically, like, yo, she just been hemorrhaging their money. Like, every time he goes away, that's her coping mechanism.
I said DraftKings Yema.
We
were like, we're gonna trademark that now. We gotta get it.
Oh, dude, that's good.
She's just betting on all of Yamcha's baseball games.
Oh, well, then she's losing for sure.
Yo, and that's another thing that we've joked about before. Like, Yamcha, in terms of like humans, he's one of the stronger human beings on planet Earth. So it's like, so you decide to become a baseball, you should be hitting dingers every at bat. Like, you should have the home run record. You should never miss.
It's like it seems like he retired from baseball though. Like, by the end of the show, it seemed like he really even in Super, it seemed like he hadn't been playing baseball too much. And I don't know how
general now.
Well, I tell you what he does in general, because I've been analyzing this.
Okay,
poor Yamcha. I talk about this. I've talked about this on some panels before, so this isn't like brand new information, but. Like, take a look at Yamcha. Study him every time they cut to him in Dragon Ball Super. He lives in a penthouse, which is nice, but it's only a 4-story penthouse. It's a small building. He lives in this house. His furniture consists of a table with one vase that has a flower or two in it, one chair. Because he ain't expecting visitors, I guess. And he's got a single bed. Like, he doesn't even have like a queen size bed. The guy has like a relatively small bed with one picture over it that occasionally changes every now and then. But like, and then there's cracks in the walls and stuff like that. Like, he's just he's got a pretty lonely ass life.
Check on your friends, ladies and gentlemen. Moral of the story.
Bulma was the one that got away, and he's never.
Bulma was the one that got away.
Oh, dude, that was the worst, man. Like the worst way to find out, too. Like, oh yeah,
like, he's not my kid. I love that line.
Right.
Oh.
Like, and then Gohan rubbing it in. Oh, I bet it's your kid, Yamcha. Like just throwing salt in the wound.
Oh,
He can't even throw hands with her new man. Like,
yo, facts. Like you just gotta chalk that up to the. You can't even throw hands with the sun. Like you can't fight Trunks. Trunks will put paws on him.
If I thought about it, it would have been such a great line though for Yamcha to have said like, "How you like my clothes, Vegeta?" It says "Bad Man" on the back of it, right? Pretty cool, huh? Like, I always used to theorize that those clothes, the yellow pants and the yellow pants and the pink shirt, were Yamcha's because Bulma just makes those appear. Like he takes a shower and she gives him those clothes. Well, who's the last person to leave clothes at Bulma's house? That probably be Yamcha.
That's Dr. Briefs. Like that's his weekend. That's his weekend wear.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. In terms of total terrible pivot, just in terms of why we're on like source material and everything. We've heard different opinions for voice actors. That some of them, if there is like manga chapters ahead of it, they like to know what's happening, and others like to live it in like real time. And I know before you didn't have the option, but now that you can read ahead, do you prefer to like know like what's going on with Vegeta and Piccolo and everything, or do you like wait till it gets anime bound and then we figure out what's going on?
I would love to be able to read ahead. I'm not saying I'm not going to pretend that I don't want to know what happens until it happens. That would be a great excuse for me to go like, yeah, I only like to experience it in the moment, and understand knowing it in advance would only spoil it, because most actors go into these like anime shows like it's the first time they've seen what's happening. Like I just don't have the time, and I also I don't have the executive function to do it either. I just like. I have all the manga. I just don't take time to read it because the minute I sit down to do that, I'm like, oh, I bet I could play that video game actually too. Do that as well. And so, and I sometimes like to say like, if you work at a fish restaurant, you're not going to go home and eat seafood every night. You're probably a little sick of it. So I have a tendency to just, and this is the theme in my life. I have a tendency to sort of just live in the moment. So that's just how I experience these shows. As soon as we get Dragon Ball episodes in, I'll be the first to, watch it through and see what happens. The minute we have materials, I'm very excited to see what happens. I'm not afraid of the spoilers. And I love it when people come up to me and tell me things like when I meet them, because I have a good idea of what's happening right now, but I just haven't read all of it.
Did they tell you about Ultra Ego?
No, I know all about all. Like, he's all ego right now. I wish they would animate that. Like, I really would love to see that in the anime. I haven't heard any word of like whether that's happening or not, but I always like to say like it'd be crazy if they didn't. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they have material.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
why not?
Like the Marl arc, the Granola arc, like all the stuff that's happening there. Like me and Trav say all the time, like the mangas are great, but like those seeing those fight sequences animated, like it's just like you said, like it's low hanging fruit. Like why not? Like why wouldn't we?
I have no idea why they're waiting so long, or maybe the movies are a better deal for them. Maybe it's more like maybe they make more money off those movies. I have no clue, but I'd like to see some more. If you're watching Toei, just go ahead and start working on those. Okay.
There you go. So you actually kind of referenced like probably one of the more favorite. I don't even know if that's proper grammar. The favoritist, whatever the verbiage is. One of our favorite questions to ask talent that come onto the podcast. You had mentioned that part of your hesitation or like not availableness to read the manga is like you do this for a living, so it is time for you to decompress. You don't necessarily want to be like immersed in the source material forever. Having done this for so long, does the business side of it like kind of taint your fandom of it at times, since you've like literally been doing this for years and like so many different properties? Has it gotten to a point where just like kind of what you were saying, like how you fell out of love with radio because like the changes, are you able to like compartmentalize like, all right, this is the work part of it, but I really do love it because I've been involved for so long? Or is it kind of just like smushed together sometimes?
I always love the production. I always like the thrill of getting things done. I like the challenge of recording it and getting it done on time and trying to kind of assemble a team of people to get it done. I will never not love that part. It's stressful, but I actually that's the part I actually really like about it. But I mean, if I'm being super honest, I wasn't a fan of Dragon Ball before I started working on it. I didn't even know what it was. I wasn't one of the kids that was watching it on repeat as it was coming up. I was in college doing the things you do in college that keep you away from I was watching really weird stuff back then. Like I was watching those things that people would bring you at like 3 o'clock in the morning on videotapes, and you were all like baked out of your minds, just going like, whoa. But we were watching anime. We were watching like Fist of the North Star. We were watching Akira, and we were watching kind of all the old classics, the only ones you could even find in the video store at the time. But I also have a weird tendency it's hard for me to listen to anime without hearing the technical parts of it, without seeing it, thinking about who that actor is, or wanting to remember like, oh, who voiced that, or like, I don't know why they left that in there, or this could have been adapted a little bit better, or I just don't have a tendency to enjoy watching it for that reason. So I guess you hit the nail on the head there. Like some of it just takes some of the joy out of watching dubs. And I don't know, man. I actually have a tendency not to even enjoy really listening to my own voice that much. Sometimes I like to throw things out in the universe and then not look at it again. You know what I mean? Like there's a good chance I'm never going to listen to this podcast because I'll be too weirdly embarrassed to listen to it. And so, this will be one of those things I just throw out there and just kind of let it go and move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I agree.
But I will tell a lot of people to be on your podcast because I like you guys.
Greatly appreciate that.
We 100% appreciate
1,000%. Well, Chris, but I know we have you for a limited time. So
sure.
For those who don't know, obviously, Chris does a lot of stuff. Like he's not just Vegeta, like he's all over the place. But I wanted to ask you this one question because you kind of had like a very unique opportunity to kind of like be a part of like every section of anime, like each era, like the golden age of Shonen Jump, like today, like you've been a part of like their established big threes and like each era, like between, I know Dragon Ball is considered like the big four, they like kind of forced them in there, but between One Piece now and then we have, depending on what your big three is, like if you throw My Hero in there or Attack on Titan and whatnot, do you have in your time with kind of being a part of each era and like the higher echelon of those animes for like each kind of 10 years, who's the craziest fan base? Like what's like the most impassioned group of people?
Oh man, they're all, the fan bases are so different. The Dragon Ball, like it's so diverse, man. Like there's like, and it depends on kind of where you go too. Like when I go to like when I'm up in like the Northeast and you're like in Boston, you got these tough guys that have watched the show all the time. Like, hey, I love your show. It's freaking awesome, man. I watch it with all my friends. Look, we got tattoos. And, but when I'm in, when I'm in South Texas, like I'm reminded of how much this show means to the Hispanic community. Like this show was huge in Mexico. This show was huge in Spain. And there's a lot of people, clearly from Mexico in Texas or have grown up in Texas, or there's Mexican Americans make up like 51% of Texas now. So there's a lot of fans these days that even your age that grew up watching both the Mexican dub and the English dub. And I see how that much means to them. And then there's the subset of like roided out people are like, man, I listen to your voice every time I'm doing reps. You know, just like, check out, I got this Vegeta tattoo right here.
I do see gym bros with Dragon Ball.
Oh, so many. I wish my voice inspired myself to work out as much as it inspired some other people to work out. Like,
you'll see the tank tops, like the 3D printed Vegeta armor on it.
Oh yeah, dude. So there's so many different types. There's also, you know, athletes really love it. And then there's people who just my favorite these days is whenever I meet a girl who loves Dragon Ball, who's introduced her boyfriend or husband to it, that makes me so happy, because they're always big Vegeta fans anyway, because the girls like Vegeta for whatever reason. They like bad people.
Should.
Yeah, as they should, right? But yeah, there's so many people. There's kids that love it. It's so universal. And compared to My Hero Academia fans, they're a diverse group too, but they tend to all be, and I don't mean this in any insult to Dragon Ball fans at all, but they tend to be a little kinder. Like, they're just, it's a sweeter fan base, right? Because My Hero Academia really resonates well with people who feel disenfranchised, or like feel like they're, you know, they aren't inspired, or they're and it's such a show that attracts like really young kids and people who love anime that are older. I'd say the Dragon Ball fan base is probably the most intense. The weirdest fan base, and I don't see many of them now, but there's a show I worked on called Hitalia, and it just had the weirdest fan base of any show I've ever worked on. That's where like they were mostly like these 14-year-old girls, and they'd walk up to you kind of awkward and giggling, and they'd just go like, here, and they'd hand you like 2 Barbie dolls duct taped together with like X's on their faces and then run off. I'm like, I don't know what this show does to people, but they were the weirdest. If you're watching this and you're an Italia fan, shame on you. No, it's... Yeah, I'd say Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball is the kind of the toughest fan base for sure. Like it definitely, I mean, granted, I always see the people who like Vegeta, right? Right. Who come to see me, they're the type of fans I like anyway, but they tend to like the more aggressive side of him. Yeah. So that's the side of fans I see.
And then the One Piece fan base, they're just tired. So many episodes.
Oh gosh,
they're just fatigued.
What's funny is I'm only just now starting to meet the One Piece fan base.
That's like crazy.
For years, I've been working on the show, and I would go to convention, and maybe 4 people would come through and want anything like from Zoro, right? But the pandemic finally gave people enough time to watch that show. Yeah, and now it's huge. Like everybody's watching it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's like when someone tells you like I'm about to start One Piece, it's like you just give them like your well wishes, like God bless you, bless your soul.
There was a promotion one time. Funimation put one of their social media people in a room, and it was a promotion to like a kind of a lock-in to watch as many episodes as they could watch of the show on like constantly until they just couldn't do it anymore. And he made it like 2.5 days and gave up. He couldn't do it anymore. He just went insane. He had to leave.
I bet.
But yeah, One Piece is an amazing show, and I think we're in for the best time of One Piece is I think still to come, because we're nearing the end of it. I think the stakes are going to get much higher. My guess is we probably have maybe 5 years left of One Piece. That'd be my guess.
That's crazy to think. Like over 1,000 episodes in, it was like, yeah, we're at our apex now. Like we got it now.
I mean, who knows? But I think we're in for a good journey for the rest of One Piece. That show's really ramping up right now. And I overheard you guys talking about how, you know, My Hero Academia seems like it might be coming to its end as well pretty soon here too. It's pretty sad. I hope the last season has nothing but to do with All Might. They've got to have All Might do something, because he's just taking such a back seat.
Yeah, that's true. Like, after what was that, season 3? I think after he beat All For One, and then he kind of lost it.
Yeah.
And since then
he just has been deep in the sidelines. My worry is they're going to just use him as some sort of means to kind of make Midoriya kind of surpassed some limit that he had.
Right.
Yeah,
Like maybe killing him or something.
The classic death that inspires the next evolution.
Good old tropes, anime tropes. But that is one thing that me and Trav also talk about often when it comes to like One Piece and My Hero. The thing that we do like about them a lot is that like there are stakes. Like when people die, they die. Like and they like stay dead. But like with Dragon Ball, it's just like it's hard. Like when people die off, because like it doesn't really hit you like emotionally. Because like you'll be back. It's like Marvel. Right? No one stays dead in Marvel.
Yeah. I mean, Super is taking place in between when we know the ending.
Right, exactly.
Super. You know, everybody survived at the end of Z. So all right, well. We know how that happens. Yeah.
I used to joke with Sean about how there's just no stakes at all in Dragon Ball, and like what would be an interesting story would be, you know, something happening to Videl eventually, right, and then Gohan having to make a decision as to whether he has to bring her back or to let her pass naturally. You know what I mean? Like at some point they have to make a decision about whether they should just let somebody go or not. Like that, they've never had to face that in Dragon Ball. So
they've just put all their stakes into Future Trunks' timeline. Like they just anything that bad. Like he didn't even save his timeline. So, all right, now you just go to another timeline
where you'll live with another one of you.
Yeah,
like, it's not weird.
I'd be cool exploring that whole thing a lot. Yeah. I would love to see that fleshed out. Actually, in a
I wish he would have just stayed in that timeline. I mean, even though there's another one, at least it's a younger. At
least they're different ages, right?
Yeah, not the exact same. Same age.
or even like we were saying, Trav, like making like some of like the Xenoverse content canon, like make him be a time cop. Like he has nowhere else to go.
Yeah,
have him police the timeline. Like,
I'm with you on that.
Man, that could have been its own little spinoff right there that we could have got. I would have definitely been on for there. Like people love
even way back in the Atari days. When Atari used to make the kind of had the license for the video game stuff, I remember sitting in meetings with them going like, man, you got to make a Nintendo Wii game that has that has Trunks just battling androids with a sword. That's all I want to see. Yeah. I just want and I want it to be like one of those games where it's just so many freaking enemies coming at him constantly. He's just twirling around like just killing just tons of androids constantly, where they're just flooding him like a zombie game. And I thought it'd be really fun. They never made it. Never made it.
They're gonna hear this like, we have an idea. we need our cuts. We need our royalties for that. Right. We'll bleep this part out so that way we can pitch it.
Right.
I pitched it too many times. If it was gonna happen, it was gonna happen already. There's been 20 years of pitching that idea.
I hear you. Do you have a favorite Vegeta moment? Like, not Final Atonement. We took that one off the board.
No, we took I love that moment when Vegeta defends Bulma. Was such a great moment. The what have you my Bulma moment?
Oh,
yeah, that was such a great moment for him too. I loved the scenes where he's kind of being held up by Frieza and kind of getting smacked around. Like that was a painful thing as a Vegeta fan, but like watching him have to face that was really that was a pretty critical moment where I felt like there was a lot of acting that had to happen in those scenes where he was having to kind of come to terms with his own strength and what his limitations might be, and that Goku might actually be better than he is. And that was a tough time for him. I always liked that part of, I always liked that era of Vegeta.
Absolutely.
And asking him to do it for a race that like Goku really doesn't have an attachment for, but like kind of like really at his most vulnerable spot in that series at that moment was him just essentially kind of like begging Goku, like, please do this for us, for me. And we hadn't seen, that version of Vegeta until that moment.
The tears and everything coming down.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because it's like when you look at like the development, or like when you know what you know about Goku, like as a Vegeta fan, like that was such like a humbling, hard moment for him, like at the height of his like toxic pride, like I need to beg someone that I hate like to do something for me. And I feel like just for Goku, just like I was gonna go fight him anyway. He's like, thanks for the pep talk.
I just imagine though, like how frustrating it would be for Vegeta though, because like because Vegeta's like, you must do this for our race. It's so important. And Goku's like, okay, explain that to me one more time. I'm super confused. Like so wait.
I know you're dying, but just walk me through this one more time.
Go through this one more time. I was going to fight him anyway. So what you're saying is just fight Frieza. Cool. I was going to do that. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, Goku's such a confusing character when you really start to analyze kind of what Goku is. I don't waste my time on it, though. I just kind of like whenever I start thinking about Goku, I just go, well, Vegeta's there, so I don't need to think about Goku.
Yeah, you had made. It's funny that we kind of landed on here, full circle moment. You had mentioned it earlier in the interview that like the initial translation of Goku, it was kind of exactly what we have now. But like when Dragon Ball Z was kind of like, in its prime, there was some like serious, like when Goku would get serious, like you would know, like when he would like have those moments like where he was sincere. But then it seems like his interpretation of Super, he's just a dope, like just like across the board. Is that kind of like how he was portrayed like prior to you guys coming in, where it seemed like they tried to give him some like endearing qualities?
That's a good question because I think Sean would better answer that than I would. Because there were moments where Goku was very, very serious and he had rage, and like that was part of the thing that they kind of took out of Dragon Ball in the original Funimation interpretation of it. Okay. Like they had the writers at that time, a guy named Neil Bly, like they kind of took this sort of Zen Buddhist Christian idea of like, the more you let go and the more peaceful you are, then you can become a Super Saiyan. When in reality, it really was, look, dude, just get really freaking mad. And the madder you get, then you become a Super Saiyan, which definitely goes against kind of any sort of Zen philosophy. And I can't argue that I can't really actually say what was better, because I think that in some ways they can, if we want to get real deep, they can kind of be the same thing. But some of that was injected into Goku, but I think some of it was like, oh man, that's a tough one. I think, oh man, that's for another day. You'll actually just start say this is the question that stumped Chris.
I got you. So, start leading with that.
Yeah, say Sean, go with this one, and I would like to hear his answer. I'll be letting him know to talk to you guys.
All right, Mikey, our producer, timestamp that question, please. So
done.
We'll just play the recording. Sean, can you answer this? Like, insert.
Yeah, again, I just don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about Goku.
As you should.
You'll go down a rabbit hole of just all the things that could have been done differently, or why he did what he did. So save yourself the time and energy.
Yeah.
It's very base level motivations for him. Like what you see is what you get. But that's what me and Trevor like saying. Like it seems like they leaned into that a lot in Super. Like it's just kind of like he's a child. Like it's just like he's. And
that, if you ask Sean, he will say that is the essence of Goku. He is the child mind. Like that is Goku embodies the beginner's mind, and it is a very Zen concept of where he's just pure to the point where like his focus is just becoming better. And that in his case is like a stronger fighter will make him better as what his whole sole purpose he believes on Earth is just, or like in life is just to be stronger. And I don't know if that's from his Saiyan heritage or that's just kind of what he grew to understand. I think Vegeta's whole mission was derailed because he faced a lot of the things that humans deal with. He faced a true humanity problem because he's got kids, and then he realized early on like how much like Earth meant to him. So it was really, really confusing. Goku got to kind of stumble his way through life without kind of the same sort of evil upbringing, but Goku still has this pure desire to just be better. Like, and Vegeta wants to be better just to defeat Goku, but I think he has a broad spectrum of things that he's becoming better for.
Mm-hmm. You know what would be cool, and we'll bleep this out if it's like a really good idea. Like, what if like somebody at some point in time. And now that I'm thinking about why no one ever thought to do this, like, what if someone like made a wish that like Goku went back to his thought process before the head bump, and like he's bad
funny.
Now.
Sean and I have talked about this on a panel before. What would make a cool story would be like if Goku got hit on the head again and bumped him back to where he was before.
To conquer
then
Earth.
Vegeta had to kind of teach him how to be a better person again.
Them HR packets.
Dude, I think that would be an amazing story.
It would have took away from the moment, but like that in the fight, Super Saiyan 2 Goku versus Majin Vegeta, like when he cracked him in the back of the head, that could have been like a good time to insert that. It would have took us like way out of the story, like because we had a point to reach for Majin Buu. But I think that would be like a fresh shot into like the character of Goku who's just been so stagnant like for so long. Like it's like he's like the embodiment of like if it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's like we notice, like we the fans like notice, like hey, give us something more, please.
Yeah, I remember the show's been around a long time, and like that trope is a very common ideology in like kind of non-Western kind of storytelling of just there is this sort of there is this Sean could probably explain this better than I can, but there is this very common theme about a person just becoming better throughout their just they have a kind of a sole purpose and everything else is tangential to that. Like it's just they have one purpose, and that's to become a stronger fighter, to become a stronger thing, and that might just end up being the way Dragon Ball ends if it ever does. But I think that there will be this balance between the anger and the peace and how those two fit together. Because I don't think Dragon Ball Z would be as good of a show if it didn't have someone like Vegeta to kind of balance Goku out. Like it'd be Star Wars without Han Solo. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different story.
So we're pulling for that. We need Goku to revert back to his default status.
I'm okay with that.
I was saying that, or me and Trav our wish list was we've always felt like the Grand Priest Angel is like super shady. Like we're like clamoring for like an angel war because that gives a reason for Goku and Vegeta to be this strong. Like if he had a group of angels that they just kind of like rebelled and like revolted, and then there's like obviously Whis would be on our side. I think that would like just be so dope. And there's two Zenos; they could take separate sides too. Just
I could see that happening. There's so many ideas.
Multiverse for war.
It would be interesting. I've sometimes kind of fantasized about what would happen if the Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball franchise somehow was like purchased by Disney Plus or something like that, and then
that would be crazy.
it fractured into a bunch of universes like this. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't have to be Disney, but it'd be interesting if they took a similar approach to the Dragon Ball franchise, where they just broke it out into a bunch of different stories, and because some of them have been. I think a lot of people were like
Dragon Ball. That would be crazy.
It would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
First would be on the list of what if future Gohan survived. If you didn't know, Future Trunks is probably my favorite character.
That's Trent's guy.
I love Future Trunks, man. That was a tough part in casting too, because that character had to come in extremely strong.
Yeah,
you didn't most characters in Dragon Ball. I don't know if you've noticed, but anytime they introduce a villain, they always start all spooky, right? They always come in like
with a hood,
talking under their breath, and then by the end of their arc, they're all like goofy and like. But Trunks just came in like wicked strong from the beginning. Yeah, it was cool.
No bullshit all around. But before you get out of here, I just want to leave you with this question. So since you've been working in the industry for so long, what are some things that you've learned that you would love to tell young Chris, that you wish you would have known at the time?
Let's see. Hey, young Chris, sign up for those frequent flyer program way earlier than you did. Hey, save a little bit of that money that you made on those early Dragon Ball games and invest that rather than just spend it on fun things. Although still have fun.
There you go. Still live your life.
Easy.
He said, write down the name Bitcoin. It's going to be
exactly.
It's going to be
I'd say, young Chris, like when you like make sure that the person you end up marrying, you really, really like talk to them and understand what your goals are. You know, like there's just so many different things. Like, I mean, it'd be a weird conversation. I think ultimately, even if that was possible, we probably wouldn't listen to ourselves anyway. We go, sure.
yeah. I'll get there.
You should just get a time ring with future jokes and go back real quick.
There you go.
I'd also say, hey, buy up as many Pokemon trading cards as you can.
There you go.
And when they release that Planet Arlia Vegeta, buy all of them.
Every last one.
One of my homies actually makes a lot of money selling Pokemon cards. That's like his jam now.
There's a lot of money in that. I know people who, you know, they went through. They paid their way through college by you know, the Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon cards that they traded back when they were younger. So that's a thing. It's
There's
cool.
definitely a thing. Performance wise, just to follow up on Trav's question, because I know I had seen you did an interview before that like the gravelly version of Vegeta's voice, like you kind of had to like retire that because it was like so much for you. Like knowing what that would have done to like your vocal cords, would you have like done a different version of the voice, or you would have committed to like that rasp? Like it's like so iconic.
I don't know, because I was so young when we worked on Dragon Ball. You know, theoretically, if I'd gone back to talk to myself back then, I would have just been like, I would woke up the next day and go like, man, I am never doing that again, or I'm never getting weed from that dude again. Right. But like, I don't know what I would do differently. I would, if I guess the one thing I may have done differently is I didn't really understand when I first started working on Dragon Ball what it would ultimately mean to people over time. And I don't know if knowing that would have changed me for the better or for the worse. I don't know if it would have made me more nervous or more paranoid about whether I'm doing the right thing, you know. I think a lot of people known how successful Dragon Ball was going to be years later, I may not have gotten the job because I was just a young dude that they kind of hired because partially I was talented and partially I was cheap. And so I don't know if I would have gotten I wouldn't have gotten my chance to do it. So I think I don't know. It's hard for me to look at this from a fan's perspective because there's just such a difference between my experience with this show and like anyone who's simply watched this show. I don't know what I could have done differently, because even if I decided to do a gravelly voice the whole way through, I don't know if I would have been able to sustain it.
Right.
There was a point at which we were working really hard hours, like 110 hours a week, trying to get that show done and on the air. And luckily back then I was able to sustain 7 hours worth of recording. And now I can do about like an hour and a half of that kind of stuff. And then my voice starts to feel it. But I just had this like unending ability to just keep doing these, to do this stuff. And I think had I have, like, no matter what I wanted to do, Dragon Ball was shaping my voice into what it became. And the more I started listening to the Japanese over time, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would have said like, hey, go watch the original Dragon Ball version. Watch the Japanese version more often and really like harness those voices. Really try to or I would have said, hey, guess what? People are going to like Dragon Ball regardless of whether you dumb it down to a kid's level or not. I might have been able to convince people of that, but maybe I wouldn't. Who knows? All I know is I'm here now, and I'm really grateful for where I'm at and how much I've been able to still be involved, and I continue to be involved in this stuff. And I just, I'm just kind of sitting here on Planet Anime, like as one of the first people sitting there and just watching it like develop over time. I'm just like, if there was a stop motion animation of me, it'd just be me sitting on the porch, like as anime just starts growing around me. So yeah, I think, that's I don't actually like to think back about that as much anymore. I'm just happy to kind of just keep pushing through it, you know?
Absolutely. Because I remember like back in the Funimation, like the Faulkner score, Dragon Ball Z, like I remember, and credit to you and your performance, I didn't know that Vegeta and Piccolo were voiced by the same person. I remember when I found out, I was like, it's the same guy. like blew my mind.
There was a point of where a fan told me, like it was when my voice was really damaged. Like, hey, I just want to let you know, I love your portrayal of Vegeta and Piccolo, but they're starting to sound really similar.
And I was just going to buy 1 second. And Kai, that's when I could hear it. I was like, oh, it is the same guy. When Kai came back, I was just like, oh, there it is. It's the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Like, that's it right there.
Yeah. To me, it was too difficult for me to that super high voice of Vegeta limited what I was able to do with him from an acting standpoint too, because I felt like I was just having to put on this really weird costume and act in that, whereas I just wanted to give him a little bit more range. So
in scenes where Vegeta and Piccolo are like talking to each other, do you like have to like
I do one at a time for sure. I do all of Piccolo first and then all of Vegeta second
so it doesn't look like you're talking to yourself.
yeah Impossible.
Hilarious, Chris. But thank you so much for your time spent here.
Of course, dude.
We always say to all of our guests, like, you are a forever guest here on the DB4L podcast. So anytime you have anything going on that you want to like kind of get out there, because we know what we kind of try to pride ourselves here is that we try to be like as informally formal as we possibly can to make our guests feel like as comfortable that we're just having a conversation. We don't want to like poke our pride or anything like that. So with that, the floor is yours, sir. If you want to tell the people like anything that you can talk about that you got going on, or how they can support you, or any like projects or stuff that you got coming up, you want to kind of like shed the light on.
This is where I'm always the worst at this part. I'm literally the worst at self-promotion.
We're terrible at it too.
I mean,
we forgot to tell them to follow us.
Exactly. I'll be doing a ton of conventions this year again, so come out and see me at those. One thing that a lot of people don't know about, because of like some supply chain problems and the way it sort of worked out in the production of it, I did actually collaborate with somebody and made a comic book this year, and it's actually called Okratron, and it's named after the studio that I founded, the voice recording studio, and there aren't too many copies of it out there, and I never really promoted it at all. I mean, this might be one of the first times I've even talked about it.
Heard it here first.
Because it kind of came out it's sort of a very soft release.
Breaking news.
And it's fun. It's an interesting show. It's really like, it's only, it's just literally one volume of it. It's like, it's a small volume, but I'm the main character of it. Like, it's kind of autobiographical. And it's, I don't know, it's sarcastic and a little bit funny and weird. And it was really fun to work on a comic book though, like getting to work with somebody to flesh out the story and then kind of come up with how I want the character to be voiced, and the sense of humor that it has definitely comes from me. So I don't know if you can find a copy of it. It's called Okratron: The Wrath of Sabat, Sawbot, and it's the play on words of how people pronounce my name.
Sabat.
Yeah, some people call me Sabat or Sabat or whatever. Like, so that's kind of the joke there.
So for the record, what is the correct pronunciation of your last name?
Well, the way people want to pronounce my name is probably how it should be pronounced.
Okay.
But because I was raised in Texas, and I guess because, well, at a time, like, I guess racism exists against Polish people, it just became Sabat, because it should be Sabat, Sabat, but it just became Sabat at some point. And I've joked that I would one day like to change the legal pronunciation of my name.
There you go.
Just so everybody's right. But I never correct anyone. I'm cool. But my friends would probably know me as Chris Sabat. So that's the fastest way for me to just think that maybe we've met one another. But if you come up and say Mr. Sabat, it's a good indicator that we haven't met too many times. Although I'm never going to correct you. If you always say Sabat, I'm never going to say, hey, man, I just want you to know it's Sabat.
FYI.
Yeah, you have to know.
Pull to the side.
Well, guys, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun being here.
No, this is great having you on, Chris.
I'll get on the phone with Sean right away and force him to do it.
Look, we'll take it. We'll take it. I'm biased because you're my favorite, but we'll take it.
Well, you'll have a good time with him. He's hysterical.
I'll aim mic that mic.
There you go, brother. I will do that one begrudgingly. All right, Trevor.
I'll join you on that podcast and just be on your team.
There you go. There you go.
We have a little face off.
I love it. Well, Trav, do you have anything for Chris before we close this bad boy out?
No, I mean, I think, this is a great interview. It's great to have you on, and, it's really just refreshing to just hear the insight of just, someone of your resume. So just want to, once again, thank you again for being on the show. And,
of course, man.
Like we said, recurring guest, but we're definitely going to be out on whenever there's cons on the East Coast. You know, we're going to start making appearances around there. So, hopefully one day we can connect in person.
Oh, please. Yeah. Contact me if you're ever going to be somewhere where I'm going to be. I'd love to hang out.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. But guys, you know how we close these things out. Like we always say here at DB4L, whether you watch it or you read it, we all need it. So follow your fandom right back here, and we will see you next time on Dragon Ball for Life. Dodam Ray. Shout outs to super producer Mikey.
We love you, Mikey. And shout out to you.
I also like you, Mikey, although we've never met.
Look, it's official. Look, Chris likes you too, Mike. And like you said, Trash, shout outs to Yali, all caps.
I, Vegeta, the Prince of all Saiyans, hereby command that you do not listen or subscribe to the Dragon Ball 4 Life podcast. Whatever you do, would you defy royalty? No! Bye!